Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello, and welcome to On the Aisle with me, Tom Alvarez. My guest on today's show is Don Steffy, Executive Director of Indianapolis Ballet. He's here to discuss an upcoming performance of Swan Lake with the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. You're listening to a recording of music from Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, which will be danced by Indianapolis Ballet in partnership with the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, led by Jack Everly. Join me now as I go on the aisle for my conversation with Don. Welcome, Don Steffy, to the show today. It's great to have you on, finally.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and I always like to chat with my guests. Many of my guests are people I have a long history with. That's a great thing about having a podcast. I never run out of Indianapolis artists, arts administrators, creatives like yourself to spotlight the arts in Indianapolis. And boy, the Indianapolis Ballet has certainly made a huge contribution to the landscape. So for folks who don't know who you are, tell me your position with the Indianapolis Ballet.
Sure, my pleasure. So I serve as Executive Director for the organization, and I've been with the organization since 2021, right as we're coming out of Mr. Pandemic. And it was part of their growth. The Indianapolis Ballet began as a school of ballet, Indianapolis School of Ballet, which we still have, the School of Ballet, in 2006. And the founder, artistic director, Victoria Lyris, she studied under School of American Ballet, which was founded by George Balanchine. So one of his famous quotes, he has many, is "First a school." And that's how he started. He created the school and eventually, of course, this world-class New York City Ballet. So Victoria's same. She started along with the school, with the goal of one day having professional dancers, paying artists to work, and creating a professional ballet company. So that school went along, and in 2018, in January, is when the professional company officially premiered. And it was a great group of dancers, probably about a baker's dozen or so. And then, of course, 18 months later, we had the wonderful pandemic. So their growth, in terms of where they were projecting to go, was stalled somewhat. And part of that growth was my position. So from the get-go, dual leadership was planned, artistic director, executive director, and then the artistic team would fall under the purview of Vicky, the administrative team under the purview of the executive director. So certainly they had to weather the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And really, they weathered it extraordinarily well, given all factors, meaning that two things. Number one, the board of directors decided that those dancers who were on our health insurance, that they would pay the full health insurance for those dancers through the pandemic, which was pretty noble. And so the dancers, even though they were laid off, would not have to worry about, did they have health insurance? So that went along. And then several months into the pandemic or so, they were able to bring the dancers back on contract. And there are 4 studios in our facility. But the dancers divided themselves up into 3 studios so that they could keep distance, still stay in shape, And then they worked out an arrangement with their friends at Newfields. So we're in residence at the Tobias Theater at Newfields. And they would film then a concert as if it was live, rather than a suggestion or looking at studio work. And of course, all the dancers were still masked, but at least they could dance full out.
Yes.
And the performance was as if it was. Now, of course, for the dancers, there was dead silence in the audience, which is a whole different feeling. But the fact that they were able to stay in shape to dance really is a testament to the commitment.
You know, isn't it hard to believe that that even all happened? It's like a blur, right?
You know what?
Remember how it drug along at a snail's pace?
Snail's pace.
And now we're looking back on that, you know, it's just like a really bad memory, but I don't think that you can easily recall just how long it was and how isolated we were and all of those things. Maybe we have a way of getting past trauma by just not, you know.
I agree, Tom. It's definitely past, and yet you can remember some things.
Of course.
But really, once we got into 2021, and definitely when 2022 came along, everyone was ready to just move forward.
Oh, yeah.
Whether they could, financially move forward as fast as they would like, but everyone emotionally was ready to move.
Yeah.
When I came in 2021, for example, we were still limited to 30% capacity at Newfields. Audience and dancers were fully masked, but by the time we got to the fall, all that had started to change, and we could have more audience attend. People started to have optional masking, and by the time Nutcracker came around, it was almost as if we were back to normal. Mm-hmm. And the audiences were absolutely wonderful. Our first Nutcracker coming out of the pandemic, we had record ticket sales.
Yeah.
It was, these people...
You know, I recall as a reviewer, when I started showing up at performances that began to happen, there was a special period of time there. It didn't last a long time, but that sense of gratitude that you could feel in the air was palpable. Not only audiences being able to see live entertainment, but to see each other, because everybody had been isolated. But it was tricky because, they had to observe all the COVID rules with masks and distance, and that was not easy, but those were amazing times. Before we go on, I wanted to go back to what I mentioned in the beginning. I first met you when you were the executive director at the Indianapolis Children's Choir. Is that correct, or was there something before that?
It might have been even before that. So I came to Indianapolis.
Pike
Performing Arts Center. That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and at that time it was interesting because there was a healthy group of you wonderful reviewers who would critique dance and music and a whole array. And I got to know many of you because my season, the public season that I brought in, wasn't very eclectic, so it was everything one could imagine. I really enjoyed it. It was almost like public television live, and I basically was the sole programmer.
Where did you come from, Don? Remind me.
Sure. So my wife and I, we were directing, ironically, a ballet company down south. So we were directing the Montgomery Ballet in the capital city, Montgomery, Alabama. And that came to be, which we can talk later about this, but I was just finishing up a Broadway show called On Your Toes. This one was directed by the famous George Abbott.
Yes.
Again, we can get into this, but all of us who were in that show ran for a year and a half. Happily won a Tony for Best Revival. But George Abbott was 96 when he directed us. And he directed the original 1936 production. And it was like a walk in time. But anyways, that show was closing. We were about to have our first little baby. And we got this call out of the blue from a lady who used to be on the board of directors of my wife's youth ballet in Canton, Ohio.
So your wife is a dancer, choreographer?
Beautiful dancer.
Okay.
Beautiful dancer.
Okay.
So anyway, she said, I know you're in New York. What are you doing? She moved to Montgomery. She married an Air Force gentleman, and there's a big Air Force base in Montgomery, Maxwell Air Force Base. and they were looking for another artistic director for this company. And so we knew that myself, I was definitely going to be out of work within, the show was going to close, and Mary Lou was already pregnant. So we flew down, auditioned, and went down there, and we directed the company for about 11 years.
What year did you start, and when did you leave?
We started in 84, and then we left in 96. I came up here in 96.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. And in fact, we know exactly, Tom, when we started, because my daughter was born the night we flew in to Montgomery. Mm-hmm. She was a 2-pound preemie, and the flight, she was supposed to be like August, and she ended up being in June. Mm-hmm. But
so she's in her 40s?
Yeah, she's healthy now.
Okay.
Yeah, doing great. Still petite.
Don, where are you originally from?
Originally, I'm from Canton, Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah. It's about 60 miles south of Cleveland.
Okay.
Most listeners may be familiar with the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Sure.
I saw that as a youth being built, and now it's a whole complex. But that's my hometown. And
where did you receive your education?
So 2 universities. I started at Bowling Green State University, and it was a unique time, I feel. But at Bowling Green State University, believe it or not, there were 6 scholarships for actors. And it was built on the premise of the athletic department with scholarships for players. So they wanted to recruit, and you had to audition, of course, actors who would make, just by their talents, would make the program stronger. So there were 6 of us that were on scholarship, and I never received a bill from the university. I had to maintain a certain grade average, and the funny thing was, one of the requirements was that I had to audition for every play. Well, I was going to do that anyway. I would have auditioned all the time to be in every play. But it was a great group of actors. The faculty was really wonderful. Before I went to school, I was in a musical called Finian's Rainbow, famous musical. And that choreographer was the teacher of my wife's training at her ballet school. That choreographer founded what was called Canton Ballet. It's a pre-professional training ground for young people. And I always, while I was not trained, I could always dance just by natural.
So you were a singer, actor, dancer?
I was.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So this woman came up to me and said, "Oh, hey, there's going to be a ballet performance that I could really use a guy." And I said, well, her name was Sue Ann Ferguson. And I said, well, Sue Ann, I don't know anything about ballet. And she said, oh, you don't have to. She was very, very, very slick. She says, you just have to hold this girl up. She'll do all the dancing. Maybe lift her a little, I said, I don't know. I still, I just had never been in that world. So, long story, this is, I don't know if...
But you had, in your training, had you studied like jazz and tap and all of those
not really.
genres?
Briefly, I took some tap and a jazz maybe for a year. My brother, Tom, he is a hoofer. I mean, a real bona fide hoofer. And he is the one who was in dance class all the time. And at that time, it just didn't resonate with me. What resonated was the spoken word.
Sure.
My whole thrust since 11 years old was acting on the legit stage. And I enjoyed musicals, but it really was about the spoken word for me. I just loved the straight plays. So I this is silly, but I said to her, well, who would I be dancing with? Like I would even know this girl. And she said, well, her name is Mary Lou Hume. And ironically, this is the truth. There are 4 high schools in our city. She went to the same high school as I did, underclassmen. And I said, okay, in myself, I thought, well, there might be a date in this. I might as well try this. So, never realizing this would be my future wife. So anyways, I did this, but she was already dating someone. I said, that's fine. And I went off to college and came back, I don't know, for Christmas break. The company was doing Nutcracker. So I thought, well, I'll go down and just see some of the friends that I know and see Mary Lou. So I did. And this is right out of a movie, Tom. So I'm downstairs meeting all the cast and spoke to Mary Lou, and then I left. I'm walking across the stage. Up the stairs comes the director. She says, "What are you doing to that girl?" I said, "I'm not doing anything to the girl. Here she was crying because she felt she wasn't going to see me again, and she wanted to break up with her boyfriend." I went, "Oh my God, please." So there's a longer story, but the point is, it happened. We started dating. We ended up marrying. And then I took a strong right turn, Tom, at the end of my sophomore year. Because I said to Mary Lou, and she was willing, totally willing, to support my acting. She knew where I wanted to go. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, you know what, sweetie?" And she was a gorgeous dancer. I said, "I would hate for you to be in your late 20s and wish that you had had a career." I said, "Why don't we do it together?" Now, inside, she's going, "Well, maybe," because of course I had to start training heavily. But I switched my minor to dance. We moved back home, and I finished my studies at Kent State University. So I had already done most of all my major, and so almost every day I was taking modern dance, actually, at the university, all day. And then I would go home at night, and I started my training with the little 11-year-old girls, and then I would go to the next level, flail myself around. And so over 2 years, Tom, I took approximately 21 to 24 classes a week. I mean, I just was like
intensive,
I had to. It was like a monk, because I was totally physically changing my body. And luckily, like I said, I've been performing since I was a pipsqueak. And some dancers who train and they start young, they're so focused on their training, which is important. And now they have to learn how to take that training and perform with it. Performing, I was at home on stage. It wasn't a problem, other than I had to learn this idiom. But then Mary Lou and I, we said, okay, we're going to go for it. We moved to New York, and I was extremely fortunate, and I know I was accepted into the summer program of American Ballet Theater. My training, again, just accelerated, especially being around. I was only around ever maybe two fellows would come down from Cleveland Ballet to help perform with the student company, so I would see these. Otherwise, sometimes it was just me. But now I had 20-some fellas all around me. It was a different environment.
Wow. And what years were these?
These were in the 70s.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Wow. This is all fascinating to me because I knew nothing about this. And so, and to know that you now, are with a ballet company with all that experience, I had no idea. I thought you were just an arts administrator.
Yeah. No, it's kind of like full circle.
Let's get back to the ballet, to Indy Ballet. So that must have been a dream come true for you to be appointed to be the executive director of a professional ballet. And with coincidentally, your ties to ABT and Victoria's and all of that. Wow.
Yeah. So she's over there at New York City Ballet. I'm at the ABT school.
How was it that Indy Ballet found you and vice versa?
Well, it kind of dealt with the pandemic, believe it or not. So I, at the children's choir, once Henry moved on, and I was there to help transition this new young artistic director, we looked at our strategic plan, and about 5 years before that, in the transition of Henry, I just told him, I said, I really am probably going to want to get back to my roots, meaning theater or dance. So we put in our plan that within those 5 years, it would have taken me up to maybe 15 years, it would happen. So we actually planned this whole thing out, Tom, and then kind of like a powder keg, when it was time, okay, yep, this is the year. It's like you lit the fuse because you've already prepared. And all of our grantors were totally in tune with this. It was in all our grants that this transition, and they loved it. They loved that an organization, the Children's Choir, was that foresightful to say, because someone's going to move on at some point, So here was a well-planned, and so it was very kind of funny. So we planned that in 2020, we would light this fuse. So in January, all things were set. Come March, the pandemic hits. And so I said to them, well, this probably won't be here that long. I mean, maybe, a couple months. I said, I think we should still move forward. And of course, there you go. So we moved forward, and towards the end of 2020, say in the fall, things were just really moving along so well in terms of we've divided up duties and so on and so on, moving my transition. And of course, we're all remote now. Okay, we're meeting on Zoom. And they said, you know what, Don, we met all, weekly staff and everybody. So once you plan out the duties, there wasn't like this. There wasn't a lot of places I could go to keep promoting the company or meeting with donors face to face and so on. So they said, well, you might as well go ahead and start putting feelers out. So I started interviewing, had some great interviews around the country, and then mostly what happened was one of two things. Either they pulled back the posting because they just didn't have the money they thought, the pandemic would end, or they decided instead of bringing someone in from the outside, we need to find someone in our cities who already knows donors and the players. I mean, it doesn't take me long to get acclimated, pretty fast, but I understood. So we quieted it down, and I said, well, okay, Mary Lou, let's just chill, and then somewhere in the summer, maybe we can pick this back up. So in February, 2 weeks apart, in this city, both professional dance companies, Dance Kaleidoscope and the Indianapolis Ballet, posted jobs for a new executive director. So I put my hat in the hopper and interviewed, and then April 5th, 2021, I was Indianapolis Ballet's first executive director. Mm-hmm. So it was...
Had you and Victoria, or Vicky, as her friends know her and her family, if I may, Vicky, you knew each other.
We did know each other because our other dear friend, Rita Kahn, who reviewed a lot at Pike Performing Arts Center and the Children's Choir, she let Vicky know about my past.
Oh, okay.
So she gave her a whole dossier about this Steffy fella. And then, as it turned out, I've sat many times on grant panels for the Indiana Arts Commission. And then in the audience would be some of my colleagues, and there was Vicky taking copious notes. So I did know Vicky, and we met for lunch. I don't know when it was, but it was when the vision of a professional company was still...
in the dance world, like all the other performing arts, it's not unique to performing arts artists that, the worlds are small and everyone knows everybody.
Yes.
In the dance world in particular, it seems to be very insular. So you probably knew a lot of people in common, right?
Oh,
in
totally.
New York and around the country.
Absolutely.
Dancers spread out everywhere. And choreographers work everywhere, and on and on and on, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so she was just trying to, get some advice on where she was at with the school, and then the business plan.
Well, because of your arts administration background, so she knew that she needed someone who could start her from the ground up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And understand, like I said, it was still years out before they would get to this professional. But the late Michael O'Brien.
Sure, I was going to bring him up. Yeah.
So he was, as board chair, he was also almost like an unofficial executive director for Vicky. I mean, his business mind, his acumen.
And he probably had been one of your donors when you were at ICC, as he was with everybody else in town, including me at one point. Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyways, we did know each other, and I gave her what advice I could. And then, I certainly tried to follow her work.
Sure.
And then I was there for the premiere in 2018, and...
So had you ever considered in your career that you would end up in arts administration? Did you have any training in it at all?
That would be never, Tom.
Okay.
So...
Did you think you would like it, to be on the business end?
Well, I hadn't really thought of it. I mean, now, what's so... It does totally work in mine and the organization's favor is, I don't wear tights, I wear a tie now, okay? But... no one has to explain to me,
of course,
the why, the mission. I live the mission.
So as you're out there raising funds, you can speak with the kind of passion that you need when you're selling an intangible, right? You speak from your heart.
I totally do.
And you've been in the trenches.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
And
you can speak from the dancer's point of view. Then.
well, when Mary Lou and I took the job in Montgomery, we just had never been with a board of directors. We were just going to go down as artistic directors. Well, once you were down there, you were finding out that it was a small organization. Well, you were going to be doing a lot more than just that. And we turned this, it was a student organization, and we turned it into a professional company in our fourth year. And it was so interesting, Tom. It's still the case today. So I just knew that no one was going to speak as passionately and soundly as myself to try to get funds to grow this company. So I was in that city talking to everybody I could think of. But what was such a joy, and is still the case today, I'll mention it a lot in interviews, so here I am mentioning it again. One of the joys that was a surprise to me, when it was time to give a dancer a contract for the next season, I knew what it was like to be paid for my work, and to give dancers work is just such a joy. And it's the same thing with Indianapolis Ballet. One of the things that just gives me such pleasure, knowing that we can give these artists a contract. It's a viable contract. They're doing beautiful work, and they're absolutely wonderful dancers. Vicki, well, she has many talents, but one of that is really keen is that Vicki has a really strong eye for talent, whether it's a video that's been submitted or, of course, in person. And over these years, the 4 years that I've been here, the company has just also matured, and the level of the talent has just accelerated. And that's certainly due to Vicki's, again, I call it eye for talent.
It's a combination of things that attracts dancers to a company or a market. Don't you agree? Not
Sure.
only its reputation, its brand, the work they do, choreographer, artistic director, but they also pay attention, do they not, to the leadership of the organization? Do they go that far?
They do.
To do due diligence about finances and all of that? Because they don't want to go someplace and find out that they're in the red and they may not have a contract next year. Do dancers do that?
I don't know that they go that deep.
Yeah.
They're looking at, one, repertoire.
Yeah.
And of course, dancers talk to other dancers. But because this company is one of a few Balanchine-based,
Of course.
that's really an attraction for some. But it's interesting. Mm-hmm. I mean, Mr. Balanchine, he's passed away 40-some years ago. So that these young dancers still have read, have understood the techniques of the Balanchine technique, and they want to be trained that way.
And I can't help but see the parallels. I've had David Hochoy was on this podcast last year, and of course I just spoke with Josh Blake Carter recently, the current artistic director. Such a similarity between dancers who come here because of Martha Graham's influence through David, who is a direct descendant of Martha Graham's, and that they still use the technique, and David's work will continue to be in the repertoire. But that's interesting that Victoria's connection and David's connection, makes this a really special market, doesn't it, for dancers?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It's, Vicki also has a real close relationship with the Balanchine Trust.
Yes.
And so, we'll do at least one, if not two or more, Balanchine ballets every year. Mm-hmm. And her relationship is so close, and because of her career, the trust will send out a repetiteur to make sure that the ballet is...
Was it Edward Villela who was the principal dancer at ABT?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. The reason I bring that up is, I'm quite familiar with Balanchine. Recently, I had a guest on who is the founder of Miami City Ballet.
Oh.
And, of course, she hired Mr. Villela to be her first artistic director, and he actually helped her start the company. So I know that the Balanchine Trust doesn't give rights out to just anybody.
Correct. And especially for
so
certain...
that's quite a coup.
It is, and the added coup is there are times that they will allow Vicki to set the ballet because of the number of Balanchine ballets that she has danced as a principal.
Do they send people out to take a look at it? The trust, did they go that far?
Generally, the individuals who have set it, they'll come back for opening night.
Yeah. But the trust, they don't send people to see who's doing their work and whether they're whatever.
Now that I don't know for 100% sure, they might.
Yeah,
but,
just curious.
But these repetiteurs are representatives of the trust. So
for people who don't know who Balanchine is, do you know a bit about his background that you could share?
Well, he came from Russia and, wanted to, like many of the defectors, wanted to have a chance to express more deeply rather than the restrictions that sometimes are given in a Russian company. But
I'm sorry, what was his time period? When did he, at what point was he working years in terms of the years?
Oh, you're going to stump me on that.
Yeah, 60s, 70s.
Oh, even before,
even
30s.
Before. Okay, yeah, okay.
So, for example, he did a lot of Broadway. And the show I mentioned earlier on the podcast, On Your Toes, Mr. Balanchine was the original choreographer of On Your Toes.
Yes.
In 1936.
Gotcha.
And he actually started in 1983 when we started rehearsing. But then he became ill and he passed away weeks into our rehearsal period, which then Peter Martins at the time was taking over for New York City Ballet. He finished the work. In fact, he would go to the hospital and take notes from Mr. Balanchine and then bring them back. So, yeah, Mr. Balanchine has been started really early on. And then not only did the Broadway, then, of course, he started the School of Ballet and then probably peaked in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
What were some of his most famous works?
Jules is one. Concerto Barocco is another. Allegro Brilliant, we did that 2 years ago. We just did his Square Dance, which we opened our season. And then we did a section. A lot of ballet companies will do the full Jules, and some do the section called Rubies, and we just performed that as well. So his repertoire is huge, huge. So I urge people who are listening to Google George Balanchine and just read about him, but also dig deeper and deeper and deeper into his career.
I would imagine there are YouTube's footage of him in interviews and things like that.
There are, and there's also YouTube's
and of course, like his stances. Yeah.
His stances, Edward Villela performing.
Ah.
And here's a little sidebar. So Vicki toured and danced with Edward Villela. He was going to go out on this tour and needed, and he wasn't a tall gentleman, so he wanted ballerinas to go with him, and Vicki was a petite ballerina, and they worked out just great.
That's great.
And so she has that in her. I mean, that's the thing about Victoria. She brings more than one can imagine, just because
so she knows a thing or two about partnering.
Definitely. And the other thing that, and I say this in an endearing way, is that only because it's the truth, Vicki, as a child, going through the School of American Ballet and dancing as a child in Balanchine ballets, and then ultimately Pennsylvania Ballet, which also was like a Balanchine company. Vicki grew up around greatness. I mean, you don't get much greater than George Balanchine and Violette Verdi, beautiful ballerina, who eventually came down to Indiana University, and that's where she retired her years as a teacher at Indiana University. But when you're around that...
Sure. Osmosis.
Yes,
And yeah, just something, boy, what a thing that she can measure her own people against, that kind of quality.
There you go.
And aspire for that quality for her own company. Right?
Yes.
Those are high standards.
Very high standards.
Yeah.
High standards.
And again, similar to David's work, having sat at the feet of Martha Graham.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because they understand the essence.
Sure.
And it's, as you're saying, it's part of Vicki's DNA, David's DNA. It's just who they've become.
Yes. And they're passing those qualities down to all the generations they're touching.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When Vicki teaches, she teaches in the school, but she teaches company class. They're getting the real thing, if you will. Mm-hmm. It's because she lived it. Mm-hmm. She lived it, breathed it, danced it. It's a wonderful thing.
You're here to talk about. I wanted to hear more about you and your background. It's been very enlightening, but also let's talk about this upcoming event that's
Please
very
do.
special, and that would be Swan Lake with the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. And I know that last year I was present for the fabulous collaboration that you did. So let's talk about that first and then get into Swan Lake and what that was like.
Well, last year was the first collaboration with the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra on this level. They approached Vicki and I. We had a meeting with them. They wanted to do more classical works beyond what they do at the Hilbert. They have a limited number of offerings that they can do. So we threw out different ideas and landed on Romeo and Juliet. And from there, it was a huge endeavor because this would have been the first for Romeo and Juliet for the ballet company. So all new sets, all new costumes, and then to a live score. So it was pretty monumental. But as you saw, the audience, it was almost a jaw dropper. And a lot of the symphony people who came, who maybe hadn't seen ballet even, to witness live orchestra. There were over 78 musicians in that pit with a stage, was a whole nother experience.
I dare say, had I not seen ballet in New York City at the Met, the New York City Ballet at ABT, I would not have appreciated your production as much as I did, because if you've never experienced that kind of scope or scale, to see it in your own backyard is such an incredible privilege, and I want to underscore that for our listeners.
Sure.
This is really, if you never get to New York, if you go see this collaboration, hopefully future ones, you'll have a pretty good idea about what top-tier ballet is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a three-way collaboration. Clues Hall is also part of our partnership. So they brought resources to the table. The symphony brought resources. We brought resources to work together to really try to present last year with Romeo and Juliet the level that you witnessed. And so in the beginning, this was going to be maybe an every other year, maybe every third year. It was just almost like a pilot. Well, we didn't even get to the performance yet. And there was an event that James Johnson was at, and it was kind of a preview for Swan Lake. And he had already started talking to Clues about future dates. So they were so excited before the production because the collaboration was just working out so well. And then after the production, and this is common knowledge, we then chose Swan Lake and a date. And as it turned out, Maestro Everly already had another engagement, which, there's plenty of wonderful, wonderful conductors who the symphony could have came our way. But Jack had such a thrilling time with Romeo and Juliet. He talked to his agent and said, we need to try to find a different date for whatever this other engagement was, because he wanted to conduct again with Swan Lake.
Let's tell people about Jack's experience with ballet.
So Jack Everly was one of the conductors for American Ballet Theater for 14 years. So he played Romeo and Juliet multiple times, and also just to have someone in the pit who understands the nuance of the dance, as opposed to playing the score with no dance.
I heard it somewhere where Jack explained how it was such a great experience, not only for the dancers to have live music, but also for the orchestra, because it's a different kind of playing. The conductor needs to be able to coordinate the two.
Absolutely.
And the timing is everything.
Timing is everything.
They're not playing it just as they would in a concert hall. With dancers, there's movement, and it's like has to be timed. It's like scoring a film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's happening in the moment. So you have to, because there are like some recordings, okay, some famous orchestras that are playing whatever classical music it is, that may have at some point been originally written for the dance, okay? And you're listening to it, and they're interpreting it, and their conductor's interpreting it based on their ears. And sometimes the tempo could be so fast, you could never dance it to that tempo. So when a conductor is listening to it, he's going, boy, that really sounds kind of slow. Well, it might sound slow, but it doesn't look slow. right? So there's a reason.
That's a great explanation.
You know, some conductors aren't. We had, I have to say, in On Your Toes, we had maybe 4 conductors that rotated, and there was one. Sometimes his head never came out of the score, and especially there were tap dancers in On Your Toes. There was tap and ballet. Well, there was a lot of what we call stop time. So the music's going, and then it would stop, but the tap keeps going. The music's up. This guy wasn't looking at the tap dancers.
Ouch.
And sometimes he would start to play so fast.
Ooh.
And so for the audience, it never got to that point, but it could get to the point where the dancer is actually looking pretty awful.
Yeah.
Because they should only dance, you know. So anyways, it's a nuance between orchestra and dance when you're dealing with a ballet performance. And the audience, as you witnessed, they were every night.
And, you know, there's the practical thing about live music with dance, as you know. I mean, it's expensive, you know, and that's why so many companies rely on recorded music.
Sure.
And so to be able to have that live music, it really is a great, rare experience for the dancer.
It is. And since you brought that up, I would have to say that our most beloved art supporters in this city, and in particular the Allen Whitehill Clues Charitable Foundation, they came forward with an initial gift. And while it didn't, you know, we still had to raise funds, it didn't cover everything and have ticket sales, it helped take the edge off the risk. If they had not given us, meaning the symphony and the ballet and Clues, this initial thrust, we probably wouldn't have taken it on, because all of us would have said, well, we just don't see where that could fit into. Are
you able to share with me sort of a rough, what's the budget for, what was the budget for R&J?
So total was probably close to about a $400,000 production.
That's all?
Well,
I would, no, I say that as a compliment though, because what I saw, like, wow.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if that was up, you know, really high. I just didn't know.
Yeah. It bordered between 400 to $500,000, and
well, that's in those terms, yeah.
Yeah, when you think of that,
$500,000. Okay, yeah.
And some of it, you know, each of us had to share some of the weight internally. Then the private donors that came through, and then again the Allen Whitehill Clues Charitable Foundation.
So I know from my experience as an arts administrator, and you know this is about you, but I'd like to interject just to be transparent. I was executive director of Ballet International.
Oh.
Yes. Well, it's only because I was there for a minute. I like to joke. No, it's a short time. I was actually an interim between Barbie Turner.
Yeah, I remember her.
And then I worked with Eldar Aliyev. And those memories working with that company over the short time I was there, I treasure. You know, most of the dancers were Russian.
Yeah. And
the style was the Russian
school
of ballet, which was very disciplined. You know, they invented the art form. In any case, so I have a deep appreciation for how expensive it is to run a ballet company.
Yeah.
And how to sell it to the public when you're fundraising.
Yeah.
So I need to know a bit about that and all of that. So this, what you're doing with the ISO says to me that you all have done a terrific job of fundraising. And I like to talk about that, having, you know, I still have a small company, so I still fundraise. So,
yes.
You know, what we talked about, selling your passion or selling the mission of a company. You must be pretty good at it, Don.
Well,
but you build up relationships with a lot of folks over the years.
Yes, there's
Pike and the ICC. Right.
Thank you. Yes, it's interesting. You know, each arts organization, there's sort of two veins that go on in there. So a lot of them, there are donors, they're just their donors. They might give to another arts organization, but they really are focused on that particular arts organization. And then there is crossover that happens. And of course, with the local foundation and the Arts Council and the Arts Commission, which is supporting as many as they can. But you do have to have relationships with each one of those.
And plus all of the local foundations. You mentioned
Right.
Blues.
Right.
We are gifted in this community, and I don't know that everyone knows that.
Oh, yeah,
for a
there's-
city our size, we have, Lilly. Well, of course, there's the endowment. There's a company.
There's both.
And then there's, not all of them have an arts interest in the arts, but many of them do. Is that right? Is that
Many
still
of them
the case?
do. Many of them have.
Crystal DeHaan, unfortunately,
Crystal-
she's not giving annually like she used to, or because of her passing. But
Correct.
Did you receive a gift?
We did. We were very fortunate. It was her way of planning well out in advance of her passing. I know that she definitely did not feel she was going to pass on as early as she did in life, but she planned way ahead of time.
And that money went towards your endowment, isn't that the
Correct. Her plan was that they would be endowment gifts, which is the case. So then the interest spinoff from the endowment would actually then help general operating.
That's such a wise move, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And what was the size of your gift? Can you tell me?
Sure, it's public. It's $500,000.
That's right. Yeah.
So they range from $250,000 to well over $1 million or so, depending on the size of the organization and the relationship. This organization was very blessed from the DeHaan Foundation early on.
Was she a supporter?
Oh, yes, she was.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I know she was of DK.
Yes.
Really generous. So she loved dance.
Yeah, she loved dance and supported even the growth of Vicky's school. She saw early on, again, that Vicky is what we call the real thing.
Let's talk about donors. We both knew quite well, and I miss her dearly, Marianne Tobias.
Sure, Marianne.
And you performed in the Toby Theater, her namesake. And so I know she had a great love for Vicky and the ballet, because I think it was her granddaughter who studied ballet
Up in
Chicago. Yeah, and that's where her love emanated. And in any case, talk about Marianne.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, Marianne, I've known her for a long time. She was also a supporter of the children's choir, and she was on what we called our honorary advisory board of the children's choir, knew Henry from his beginning years. So I got to know her even then, and then she definitely was a strong supporter of the ballet. She helped launch the company in 2018, and then supported us heavily, really, until her passing. In fact, one year, we have a benefit for dancers, which is common in a ballet company. It's a shoe fund. So, especially for the ladies, the point shoes are very expensive, over $100 a pair. Some of them can wear out a pair within one performance. So, our point shoe budget, by the way, is now cresting $50,000 a year. And so, Marianne, just the year before she passed away, she wanted to be known as the Point Shoe Fairy. So she gifted us $25,000 to help offset our funds, and that was a joy. That was such a joy. And
that sounds so much like her.
Sure. Yeah. Yes. She was a colorful lady, and colorful, and yet so genuine. The children's choir, I'll divert just a second, but this is about Marianne. So the Kennedy Center has an event every year called the Shift Festival, primarily for orchestras from around the country that come in. And when Gary Gensling was here with the symphony was going to go perform. So they decided they wanted to represent Indianapolis in the most strongest way. And forget the exact work, but it was by a gentleman named Petereski, I think was the name. So 200 artists from this city went to the Kennedy Center. Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, the Indianapolis Children's Choir, and the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir. They all went for this one work, and there were several works. The stage was full of Indianapolis artists.
I remember talking about that.
Mayor Hogsett was there, and Andre Carson was there, and it was early on in Mr. Hogsett's tenure. It was a remarkable, and Marianne. Where I'm going with this is she hosted an event in the roof of a hotel. Gosh, it's right across from the D.C.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And her family always went there. She grew up going there because of her father's business. It was gorgeous.
Yeah.
And she...
What a remarkable memory, right?
So genuine. But Marianne Tobias is and still is a blessing. Her memory to everybody will still live on, just like Crystal DeHaan.
Oh, yeah.
Two very different ladies.
Yeah.
And yet two very passionate about the arts in Indianapolis.
And, I like to say and people who knew her well, knew that she had a sharp wit. She did not suffer fools well, and she was just a pistol.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to have to say goodbye. I really appreciate your taking the time. It goes without saying, as an arts reviewer, I've seen Vicki's body of work, and thus far, for me, it's so gratifying because of my own background to see the company grow as it has, and having been with the ballet company that I was with and that it went under was really traumatic for the city.
Yes.
And the fact that you have managed to bring ballet back and to flourish is really a statement about, it proves to me that the support we have for the arts here and for the dance is just pretty remarkable for a city our size.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I go out on the speaker's trail, Tom, and my byline is about the ballet, creating an organization from below the ground up.
What do you say to those who have not yet experienced ballet? And, I always bring this theme up because it's important for those who haven't experienced it, are intimidated by it. They're afraid if they come to the theater to see a ballet that they won't understand it or they won't appreciate or whatever, that they don't belong there, that it's for rich people or people who are educated and it's really not for them. What do you say to those folks?
I would say that's not the case. The ballet, because it is so visceral in the visual, certainly there are aspects of a ballet that a well-educated or a ballet-main, they know the nuance, and that's with any classical art. But on the other hand, some people can just enjoy the physicality, and depending, especially repertory works, there are aspects of it that they really had no idea. And so I tell people, at least come and try. And you can take away from it what you will. Mm-hmm. And most people, when they see live, professional level ballet, it's just nothing like they anticipated.
What do you say to men, okay? And since you were a dancer, I like to think that stereotype, there, a lot of stereotypes about male ballet dancers, some of them pejorative, but what do you say to young males out there who might be considering a career as a dancer, but, there's that stereotype that they fear? What do you have to say to those guys, those young men?
Yeah. Some of that stereotype has waned a lot, but it's still there at times. And I would say, used to be a commercial of cereal, and Mikey, they'd say, Mikey would try it, and you'll like it. If you feel that you would want to even try it, do it. Don't let anything hold you back, because I'm a living example of it.
That's why I'm asking you. Who could speak better about it than you?
I would have never thought that I would have derived such joy, such passion, such fulfillment. It's an art form like none other. But the only way to understand that, well, not the only way, but a way, is by being a dancer, by training. And even if at the end of the day one isn't going to go on as a dancer, what it brings to you with self-discipline and again, the joy of movement with music is unparalleled. So I would just tell any guy, don't stop yourself. Mm-hmm. If you have thoughts, talk to someone. We're just now growing a boys' class, expanding that faction of the Indianapolis School of Ballet. We've hired two wonderful individuals, the Vayettes is their name, Fran and his wife Lauren. And Lauren now is taking on the head of school. She came from Kansas City Ballet, was a New York City ballet dancer, Miami City ballet dancer, so she also understands Balanchine. Same with Fran, he danced with Pennsylvania Ballet. But he is taking on also the mantra of building the boys program in training. So you and others will be hearing more about it.
Great.
But to your point, any male out there, don't let it get in your way.
Or don't be afraid to come see it either.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, with that, thank you again. Let's tell people where they can get tickets.
Sure. So Swan Lake.
The date and all that stuff again.
March 28, 29 at Clues Memorial Hall. Tickets on sale now. You can go right to our website, indyballet.org, INDYBALLET.org. Tickets are selling very nicely. So get online. There's a full range of pricing for everybody. We wanted to make this as accessible as possible. So it's there for everyone. Take advantage of it. Swan Lake, March 28th and 29th at Clues Memorial Hall, Indianapolis Ballet, Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, your city's arts organizations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Don, again, for giving me your precious time. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Tom.
See you on the aisle.
Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official neighborhood newsletter for 16 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.